Thank you. I'm Rick from NVIDIA. We're kind of all over the Siggraph this year. And I'm going to try to do a quick breeze of, whoops. Initially, we were titling this talk, Creation Through Imagination, but looking at the material we wanted to go through, we have 23 talks that are here at Siggraph, 23 papers that we announced and some really groundbreaking innovations. And so I wanted to kind of give a really quick blow through, kind of like little bits of papers. And some of the papers really require a little bit of history and backstory to see, you know, the innovations and the advances that we've made on previous papers. So if I get this thing, okay. So first we're going to talk about bodies in motion. There's been a lot of stuff around, you know, AI for character mechanics. And there's been a lot of stuff about getting, you know, more agency into player characters and non-player characters. So this year we have something called CALM, Conditional Adversarial Latent Models for Directable Virtual Characters. What the heck does that mean? Basically, if we go back on some previous research, we're trying to take data, whether it's created by a human animator or created through motion capture, and we're trying to train a neural network to learn exactly what are the motions that are going to be contributed based off of particular inputs. You know, in this case, I can give a vector input, and based on that vector input, it knows the way the motion is going to need to be based on training on this large corpus of data. So the nice thing is I don't need to go in and create a whole bunch of things that are like labeled to a particular cycle. I'm just capturing a whole bunch of data, and then based on that whole bunch of data, I can take it and I can trigger it. So if this one we used 187 clips, so we have 30 minutes worth of motion capture data, which we capture into this we call adversarial skill embeddings. And so based on that, we can put it into a neural network, reinforcement learning, where we put it into a gym and we say, everyone, we're going to give you a goal, try to attain it. And then we train it. And we'll train it for, say, 1 week. And they don't do so well with 1 week of training. So basically, they're infants. They're learning to walk. They're not kind of going so well. But this is like 1 week in sim time was 30 minutes of actual compute time. So let's make this a little better. So oh, sorry, I got to point this description. Okay, 1 month of training. So 2 hours of actual sim time. So again, in reinforcement learning, we're basically taking a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of actors, and we're telling them to reach a goal. And the ones who succeed or are most successful are the ones who are going to essentially live another day in another round of the simulation. Oh, come on, I had another one. Okay, 10 years. Will this play? Okay, so this is 10 years worth of training. You know, so 10 days of actual simulation time, and now we're starting to see those behaviors that we were seeing from in the original motion capture data. So now we can give it specific instructions like go hit that tower, go jump over that bridge, or using a game controller, I can tell it to go in a particular vector at a particular speed. Okay, what else can we do? There's also stuff where we're looking to, moving too quickly for me. Automatically jumping forward. Okay, learning physically simulated tennis from broadcast videos. Think of this as any sports, but essentially we can get a whole bunch of tennis videos of, you know, high schoolers playing tennis. And we can train on that. And in this, we're learning multiple things where we're trying to train an agent to, you know, not just mimic the motions that we're seeing through the video. We're also training that agent to be able to hit particular targets. So they're not just learning the motions, but they're actually learning the skills. So in this first ones, we're basically saying like, we're throwing a ball, I'm going to make sure that you can hit that ball back. We're also saying, we're throwing you a ball, we want to make sure that you can hit one of any number of targets. And we can do this across multiple modalities. So the idea is if you're creating a sports game, you can learn from the actual players in the game, and you can create something that's going to have a much higher level of fidelity in that overall motion. We've got a few examples of, you know, difficult shots. We can also go back and forth between whether someone is, you know, right-handed or left-handed, where they're going to be hitting under, you know, underground, whatever. I'm not a tennis pro, so different types of actions within the tennis thing. You know, left-handed, right-handed, and we can take this a bit further. So going from bodies, we're going to talk about talking heads, more than just me. I have audio on this. And at Computex, we showcased something that we refer to as Ace for Games. So I'm going to let this play. Thank you.
We're thrilled to showcase an immersive and dynamic interaction between a player Kai and a non-playable character named Jin. This captivating ramen shop scene was created by NVIDIA using the latest RTX rendering technologies. NVIDIA collaborated with Convey, an NVIDIA Inception partner, to showcase how developers will soon be able to use NVIDIA Riva, Nemo, and Audio to Face for AI-powered speech, conversation, and animation. These models were integrated into the Convey Services platform and fed into Unreal Engine 5 and MetaHuman to bring Jin to life. Please take a look.
Hey Jen, how are you?
Unfortunately, not so good.
How come?
I am worried about the crime around here. It's gotten bad lately. My ramen shop got caught in the crossfire.
Can I help?
If you want to do something about this, I have heard rumors that the powerful crime lord Kuman Aoki is causing all sorts of chaos in the city. He may be the root of this violence.
I'll talk to him. Where can I find him?
I have heard he hangs out in the underground fight clubs on the city's east side. Try there.
Okay, I'll go.
Be careful, Kai.
So, all right. Oh, geez. So that demo is actually a confluence of technologies all kind of coming together. The dialogue that was spoken by the agent was not prescriptive. It was all generated on the fly through a large language model that was specifically trained to know the domain of the game and the information about the particular character. So you could go in and you could ask it multiple questions and you could get different answers depending on the current environment at the time. And with the technology that NVIDIA is putting together, one of the key pieces that's available now for everyone to play with is we have this thing called audio to face, which, again, the animation on this was driven entirely by the audio file that was created through our text-to-speech system. And that audio file is generating all the facial animation. And we've done a number of iterations on this. I think we first showed it at Siggraph probably about 5 years ago. And we've had a number of advancements.
Audio to face. With these updates, I've significantly improved my Mandarin Chinese capabilities. 这个最新的生成式人工智能模型，极大地改善了我面部表情和唇形同步的质量。
And it's non-language specific.
見渡せる場所に今朝はたどり着く遠く線路が伸びる
So with these models, we have a generalized model that is basically training the motion of vertices to particular sound bites. And so depending on the size of the data set you're putting into it, motion and sound going into one particular point in time and out of it could be completely different. So we can take this and we can generalize it so that, again, we're not based on any particular syllable or sound. We're not based on any particular syllable or word. It's all based on the sound, which means it's language agnostic. As long as your corpus covers all of the sounds that you might have across multiple languages, you don't need to do custom language embeddings. But of course, these characters look kind of funny bald. So this year we have a new thing, interactive hair simulation using ADMMs. Essentially, think of an ADM as a way that you can take a really using an algorithm, take a really complex problem and optimize it into a number of smaller problems, which you can then parallelize on a GPU. Oh, shoot. I'm going to learn how to work a clicker one day. Play, please. Okay. So in this, we're basically showing a hair grooming system, which is entirely interactive and dynamic. So rather than going in, we have to like place guide curves and individually change the length of those curves. The idea is you create an overall groom and you let simulation do the work. And then you can go in and you can cut and style the hair as you might if you're a real digital hairdresser. Okay. Some of the other stuff we're doing. Neural networks have been all the rage. We've talked about a few of them. Now we're going to talk about some of them a little more directly. I've got 3 things. So VDB has been kind of a mainstay in volumetric rendering for a number of years now. And through the work with OpenVDB, we've taken and made a neural representation of it. The big difference between it is we can get sometimes 10, 20, up to 100x compression on the type of data and still get the same fidelity results. So when you're looking at these very large simulations of water and natural phenomenon, basically disk spaces and reloading that is not your friend. With something like neural VDB, we can learn it in basically a neural network. Those weights are trained to really greatly reduce the amount of data on storage. Neural textures, taking the same idea, what is it that we can do to basically learn more about texture information? And in these examples, we're keeping about the same file size, but we're getting a much higher resolution out of the same data set. And the cool stuff about some of these things is you can go in, and if you want to do automatic LODs, we're looking at doing things like layer pruning. So things that you can do directly in the neural network. We can reduce the number of weights, and we can do automatic LODs based on what you've pre-trained at your high resolution model set. And we're doing the same thing with materials. So the idea of looking at like, how can we, rather than trying to encode a really complex BRDF, can we train a neural network to learn the information in a complex shading model and then represent that, and hopefully at a greatly reduced computational power. So in these examples, we've basically trained these neural networks and embeds kind of like texture and material all in one. And the idea is, how can we take super high fidelity graphics and one day make them real time by taking advantage of things like tensor cores and the fast matrix multiply operations that we have across the hardware available these days. And that's mainly it for my examples. And I'm hoping we have some questions or anything from the crowd.
Do you know any good digital hair cutters?
No, but there'll be a bunch coming out soon.
So you had OpenVDB as a representation. One of the things that's been really interesting about AI is the paucity of direct polygonal representations in it. I mean, we have NERFs and things like that. Is there anything that's being done with polygonal representations in neural learning?
Polygonal representations? Yes, quite a bit actually. So there's a few different things. We're doing a lot of work going from various neural representations that are volumetric into polygons directly. The work that we're doing, we can't talk about yet, but there's some stuff. We're doing a lot of work on like micro meshing and things like that, where we're taking and reducing the detail from the original mesh and representing them in other ways. But I can look for us next year about some more neural approaches to mesh storage and reconstruction.
What are the plans for this technology to trickle down to products, specific products like Omniverse or game engine, or a plugin for example, the hair one will be amazing.
That's kind of like our whole approach. Like, if you've heard of Omniverse and Omniverse strategy, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make an ecosystem where tools play better together. You know, we don't want to reinvent the wheel because you have these amazing tools that everybody knows. We're trying to make it so that you can have a single format like USD, which makes it easier to move your data back and forth. With that, Omniverse is a platform for developing the tools and utilities that you don't have. For us internally, we're doing all this AI research, and we need to put it into something, and we need to put it into something quickly and easily because it's not productized yet. So Omniverse for us is not just, you know, a development platform like out there in the wild. It's how we do our work. So we have all these different teams that might not be working on Omniverse, the product, but they're working on physics. They're working on texture reprojection. They're working on, you know, large language models for texture creation. And for us, we can test all that out and we can make an initial release through Omniverse. Another example is we introduced, 5 years ago, real-time ray tracing, and it took 2 years for something we had completed to make it into a commercial package. Now we can release technology that we developed immediately into Omniverse, and even if that's not available in Maya or Houdini or Max, you can bring your USD into Omniverse, take advantage of that new hot tech, and then output it into the Unreal Engine, output it back into Maya, output it into wherever you need to. When? Some of these things will come sooner than later. Like the neural VDB will be sooner, the hair will be sooner. But also for a lot of people out there, we do quite a bit of research, and but we also work with people who want to take our research, and even if we don't have a commercial license, we will talk to you about a possible commercial license. And for us, we just kind of know what you're doing with it and where you want to take it. But we're really interested in partnering with people. And a lot of our strategy is also, we're not a big data house. We're not a film studio. We're not Shutterstock. So we do a lot of the underlying research, but to productize a lot of these things, people want something that's already trained off, ready to go. And for that, you need those large data sets. And so we're doing more partnering, in the ecosystem with people who have those data sets and are collecting. We're providing some of the research and some of the engineering behind it, helping them optimize, hoping that they will bring the tech to market with their data sets. So.
Thank you. So when you use nerfs, so this is not like a standard representation, right? So they seem amazing, but like integrating them into 3D engines and stuff would require converting them into meshes or doing some sort of, I don't know, like in-shader inference or these kind of things. And hardware is not really optimized to do that, right? Like hardware, I guess like GPUs came to do like mesh processing and these kind of things. So if you want to go the nerf side, then probably that would need a completely hardware redesign or a completely different approach to stuff. Is that something like that's in NVIDIA's plans, or are we going to stick to meshes forever?
I don't think we're going to stick to meshes forever. You probably saw representations of nerfs inside of Omniverse. So we're basically looking at multiple render paths. So in certain respects, you can almost think of it as, well, you can ray trace them. There's more of a rasterization or a restore component to it. So we're kind of looking at, what is the best way to bring it about, but also not all nerfs are created equal. So there's what we're doing with like our instant neural graphics primitives, and essentially think of it as a different nerf codec than what other people might be doing. So one of the things we're actually looking at doing is figuring out like how come the ecosystem come together. And there are other vendors out there that are doing things like making nerfs available, in the Unreal Engine per se. So that's one way they're coming to the forefront. But I think the representation is going to be rather magical coming up, because the nice thing about a nerf is you have all that view dependency baked in. So if I see something from different angles, like I don't have to relight it or delight it. I'm catching reflections, refractions, subtractions from all those different angles. It's a light field all in one. So in the use case of streaming high fidelity content or capturing high fidelity content for something like a virtual production stage, it's like capture and go. So I think people are going to be working on this for a while. I don't think I answered your question, but.
Just really quickly, a lot of what you just described is considering the inference as a form of compression.
Yes.
Right? So what have you guys done to compare this technique for compression in terms of time and computational cost versus more traditional techniques?
I can't answer that.
Sorry, I asked the good questions, Rick.
I mean, well, I think one of the big things would be, we can the individual researchers, if you look at their papers, they're probably going to compare the different times, like for the neural texture compression, like you'll see information there about typical compression schemes versus the neural representations. So, and there's different reasons that you compress, not just for space, but a lot of times it's being able to through the decoder be able to access the data quicker. So I don't know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful to have you.